hot whip and the Piranha Firecracker 242. I have the 252, as y'all know, but I also paddled the 242, and he's got a little bit of both of them, which is kind of crazy because not many people actually have both. Do you know anybody that has actually both of these things?
I do not. I do not.
Exactly.
But there again, I'm not really smart either. So. Yeah.
Well, you've been around. He's been around the block a few times, from what I understand. But what I was going to do for y'all today is I'm going to do kind of like a quick comparison because I've actually never compared these two. And for whatever reason, I've never kind of had a chance to compare them to. And I will do a comparison of the 252 and 242 comparison because I get asked that question a lot. Because I personally prefer the 252 over the 242, which I know I'm kind of sounding like a broken record here. I'm going to kind of start back here to back, and we'll just kind of like work our way to the front and break down what the specs and the overall shape and all that of each one of these. All right, let's go ahead and let's start with the specs first. So I'll throw the specs up on the screen. So from my understanding here, the hot whip, contrary to a lot of people's beliefs, especially this guy, it is 72 gallons of volume on the hot whip. And I think, what was it, 68 gallons on the Firecracker 242, because there is a small hot whip out now, and I think it's the hot whip 60. I've seen it, but I've not paddled it yet. And then overall length of these, so the Firecracker 242 comes in at 7'11", and this comes right at 8, and I put a measuring tape on it. But overall, when you kind of look at them side by side, we were just talking about this, about how, you know, thinking about the sizing on these, you can see where Liquidlogic added the extra volume right here when you look at the narrowness of the back of this, because the width on these things, the Firecracker's 26 inches wide in its widest point, and the hot whip is 26.5, which it looks like here's their widest point from here to here. And this is just all visual. I haven't, that's kind of hard to do, to go over that, but you can kind of see. Would you not agree with that? Yes. It looks like they're wider behind your hips and they're wider in front of your hips.
I would totally agree with that. I would say that the hot whip just feels like it has a little bit more volume right behind the back of the cockpit. And for me, being 175 pounds, being a class 3 beater and a 4 beater on my very best day, as opposed to this guy, which, you know, could paddle a bowling ball down the narrows. I am not that guy. I'm just.
Sometimes I feel like a bowling ball down the narrows.
Well, I need something that's a little bit more forgiving. The hot whip seems to be a little bit more stable for me, just because it seems as though the tail kicks up a little bit and it doesn't engage unless I mean it to, whereas the Firecracker's given me a lot of roll practice here lately. Yeah, and I'm 180, 185. I'll kind of bounce around. At my lowest, I'm about 175. And I agree with what he was saying about the hot whip and the Firecracker. The Firecracker 242. I will get into the 252 later. But I agree that the hot whip felt a little more stable downriver and was like more kind of like in between a playboat and a creek boat, where this was closer to a playboat than a creek boat. So it's kind of weird how these kind of like actually contradict each other. So you can own both, like this guy. There you go. But one of the things, I want y'all to look at this. Look at the difference in tail rocker. Almost 2 inches of rocker on the tail. And that definitely helps for getting back and lifting the bow up. Because what Piranha's done, what I did like about the Piranha, I absolutely love this Piranha bow, the width and these wave deflectors. I liked the hot whip's bow, but I thought it was a little too narrow. But I love the hot whip, the Firecracker, so it's weird. I would almost like to have this bow on that tail, and I think we'd have a perfect boat. And then just put that bow on that tail and just call it a day. And because I love the width that they did. When you guys look at the width here, you can kind of see where my hand is. Like if I put my hand right here and then I put my hand right here, there's probably about 3 inches extra width in this tail over the Firecracker, which is kind of, that's a lot when it comes down to like squatting out of things and coming out of a drop. This gets back on and lifts up, where the Firecracker will go down and kind of go up and over. It has definitely kicked my ass more times than I wanted to, that's for sure. The hot whip stern and the Firecracker bow sounds like a concept boat in the
Who knows? Maybe we might see that coming soon. I do like the fact that Liquidlogic did an additional handle here. I've always liked having more handles the better on these, especially one right here. Pyranha could have easily brought this up a little bit and done the same thing. If nothing else, at least one of those little small security bars. But it's funny, they have the same amount of handles, but I would rather have it up here than back there. I don't know. It's just, maybe it's just me thinking I can hold on to it in a pinch. Back there, it's really just for a tie down or locking it down. He did the updated back band right here, so he's hacked that back band. Oh, and he even put the little straps in there.
What are we gonna?
So that it works, and once you get it outfitted, it works pretty good. Do you not?
It's great. I love it. I consistently am starting to tighten everything up with these.
It's handy, ain't it?
It sure is.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. I'm guessing it probably saves some of the wear on the ratchet teeth here.
Yeah, it's always been hard for me. Sometimes the ratchet pulls through, and you're sitting there, and everybody's piling off and leaving. You're like, hold on, let me get my ratchet. You're less likely to do that with these, and it's a lot easier to thread them. Definitely, it's hard.
I'm inevitably the guy that is that guy that's at the very, the end of the pack. And
using your pinky finger to get.
I'm still trying to get dressed while everyone's halfway down the river. So.
Yeah. So when you actually put when you move this back band up and put thigh hookers in there and do that, I'll argue with people. This is actually pretty solid outfitting. Yeah, and I'll prefer it over the Liquidlogic. But right out of the package, if we pulled them right out of the package on the side of the river, Liquidlogic, you throw hip pads in here, pull that over, some foam down there, and let's go.
Amen.
And that Liquidlogic is really this badass outfitting. It works. It could be improved a little bit, but I think it works for what it is, and I've always been really impressed with it. It's just does its job. Cockpit-wise, so they did change their cockpit. This has the new cockpit on it. Piranhas, they used to have on, especially the Scorches, but I think with this model, they have that smaller cockpit where when you look at it, it's very similar. These cockpits are very similar, but I still use an XL skirt on both of them. And a step-out pillar. I'm always a fan of a step-out pillar over a foam wall. If you can add that extra in there for this boat to crush, you'd have to break these inserts out and knock that whole thing over. Really, if this got wet, it just pops out of that wall holder, and you're kind of...
I've never had to use a step-out pillar, and I never do. So.
Well, I have a couple of times, and it's not fun, that's for sure.
My buddy Wormy, Matt Ward, had suggested putting the hookers in, and I did find that made a really, really big difference. I've got them set about midway.
I can tell, yeah.
I don't want them any more aggressive.
Where it's just like one finger coming down.
I'm still somebody that swims. I still need to be able to get out.
Well, they definitely help hold you in. That's for sure. And I like this type. I like being able, how you see how that is? I like this, how I can do that. Exactly. Where I'm not a fan of this. Because, see, you would have had to hook onto there, and you'd been fooling with that. So I do like that Pyranha does that, where Liquidlogic should kind of look into that, doing something like that, where they would be able to do a quick over that, then because if we had it hooked through here, we got to fiddle around with it. We're not like all those Waka guys on Rock Island. We carry ropes with us.
That's right.
Had to put that little stab in there.
I was told if you're out of your boat and you don't have a rope, that's worthy of a booty beer. I don't.
There you go. You know how every time I get out to scout, portage, or whatever, I grab this and just hook it on my vest. So this would be with me at all times. Listen up, guys. Okay, so that's pretty much the decks and the outfitting and the specs for y'all. Let's go ahead and let's kind of roll them over and let's check out the hulls on these things, because this is one thing that's going to be very interesting right here. Because I've paddled them both, obviously, but I've never had them side by side and been able to compare them. So back here, looking at this, they did this ozone style. I like this, but one thing that a drawback to the Firecracker was it's so narrow back here. This area is very narrow. Where you look at this area back here, it's really wide and planing. This is like a kind of like a flat planing and then a drop down edge into like a decently hard chine, where this comes down and it scoops. So this will be able to capture water a little better. And I really liked how this hull performed in a hole for spinning. This was more kind of friendlier on creeks. You've had it on lower volume creeks. It slides off really good. This thing holds up a little bit, but it's a better overall edge for me as far as like big water, creaking, and all that.
For a dude like me, the hot whip, it tends to carve a little bit better.
Yes.
For I'm assuming it's because of that edge.
Here's where Piranha takes over. About where the bulkhead bar is going up, or where the bulkhead bolts are going up, they carry their edge, but they taper this off nicely, but their edge is high, which is this wave deflector edge, and it runs out right here, and I'm able to drop that bow and carve. Like if I come down and hit a big hole, I can do that. This doesn't do that. It comes down and it's a little more narrow, because just like the tail, check out the width on this bow. When you look up here, it's almost like there's my hand there to there, and then when you look at this, it's probably about maybe 2 inches before the drop down rail. When you look at the actual flat planing surface, it's probably that freaking wide up here, where the planing surface on that is like maybe 4 to 5 inches wide across here. And this bow would go down where it actually performs is dropping back on the tail rocker, and it helps lift it up, and it hits about right here. So what do you think of the bows?
When you get it on a short, steep wave, this one seems to perform a little bit better for me, simply because the the bow tends to be so much steeper, I think. I don't know, again, if it's my perception.
Remember, we measured the rocker and the bow, which I forgot to show that, but it's 1 inch higher.
Okay.
This is 1 inch higher on the rocker on the bow. So what he's saying makes sense. You can almost see where the scratches is. Look how you have no scratches here. Where look how far your scratches run out on that.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense. Yeah, exactly. So it kind of makes sense what you're saying on how it's hitting this area up here, which this is where it's wider, but then up here it's really wide from here to here. This is really wide up there, and they're both pretty planing up here, but you can definitely see how much higher this sets up than that one. Because the volume on this one is from here to here, and the volume, I think, is more distributed better on the hot whip.
It feels like the hot whip's has more initial stability. It's got great secondary stability as well. Whereas the Piranha, I feel like I can get it over on edge a little bit further, but yeah, it's a little twitchier for me.
It makes sense, because look at your taper. Yeah. Look at how you're tapered right here, and look at your taper there.
Got it.
That's where your stability comes from, is how much taper you got right there, where that makes total sense why this doesn't have that initial and this has more initial, and like this has that secondary. It goes down and it drops down, and it doesn't hit volume to right there. So that taper is what makes this one a little twitchier, but it also makes it a little sportier for getting around the river. I think it's a great river runner, creeker player. This is a great play river runner, kind of everything, and this is more of a player creeker. Let me rephrase that. This is more of a player creeker. This is more of a creeker player.
Yeah, I would say, just based on feel, I would agree with that. See, you learn something new every day. I just did.
Yeah, there you go. And price-wise, obviously, I think it's about $300 cheaper retail.
Correct, yes.
So let's roll them back over. And you're 175. What do you think of the fit?
They both fit me pretty well. I think you had said that in the Piranha, your knees sit a little bit higher.
I love the knee position.
I do too. It's definitely more narrow. I feel like if I had to pick an all-day boat, I think right now I'd probably pick the Firecracker. It just seems to fit a little bit better.
Yeah, but as far as like paddling, if you had to choose one today, if I was like, which one would you choose today? Which one would you take out of these two?
Out of these two, I would probably take the hot whip.
Well, there you go. There's a hot whip guy.
Yeah.
And this is a tough one for me, because I love from there up. But if I had to choose and you're like, I only get one of these, I'd probably take the hot whip. But then I could also be happy in the Firecracker, because honestly, just like him, you could own both of these and be happy all day long. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like they're very different. I know you might look at them, they're only an inch different in width and a half inch. I mean, inch different in length and a half inch in width, but they are very different paddling boats.
Absolutely, and the volume feels different. The reason I would pick this one is, if I were, doing something I've done 100 times and am super comfortable on, I could take this, obviously, and have fun with it. But if I were also doing something that was a little bit spicier, that, got my my pulse and my blood pressure up a little bit, and I really kind of wanted to stay upright and feel like I had a little bit more control and not get thrown around for making stupid mistakes, which I tend to make a lot, I would say that the hot whip is probably the one that's that's the most forgiving for me.
That's pretty, and you know what? Liquidlogic stayed in with the drain plug. They have it in that awful spot that I absolutely hate, because if I pick this boat up to drag it up a hill, guess what's going to go right in the back of my hand? That annoys me. Listen, Liquidlogic, just look at what Pyranha doing and just get rid of it. I'm fine. Have you ever noticed, does it ever bother you that this doesn't have a drain plug?
Never, no.
There you go.
No,
what was the point of the drain plug? They could remove that today.
There's this thing never gets full enough of water that, you know, it's not like it's a creek boat where you really need it. I think. Now, after, you know, a really nasty swim or something like that, and I'm having to empty it out, ask me then, I may have a different opinion.
Yeah. Well, all right, man, I appreciate you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for letting me check these two out. Let's get over, let's do a side-by-side of the 252 and 242. You guys leave in the comments below which one of these you paddle and which one you like, or if you paddled them both and which one you prefer, or which one do you own. Because I'm 50-50 on them. Mm-hmm. And apparently he's 50-50 because he's got them both. He still has them.
I'm going to be key. I have no plans to get rid of either one of them. I love them.
There you go. All right. See y'all in the next video.